While ISIS's public executions shocked the world, a darker horror remained hidden. Thousands of women were systematically imprisoned, tortured, and assaulted in facilities deliberately kept off the radar. In this documentary, we unveil the network of secret prisons where female hostages faced unimaginable suffering, a truth that ISIS tried desperately to conceal. What happened inside these walls, and why has this story been overshadowed until now? The Shadow System, ISIS's hidden prison network. While the world was fixated on ISIS's theatrical public executions and slick propaganda videos, a shadowy parallel system was taking form across their self-proclaimed caliphate. Behind unmarked doors and within walled compounds, ISIS established an elaborate network of women's prisons that operated with chilling efficiency and purpose. These weren't afterthoughts or impromptu holding cells. They were carefully planned facilities specifically designed for the detention and exploitation of female captives. In the urban centers of Raqqa and Mosul, as well as scattered throughout smaller towns across Syria and Iraq, ISIS created a detention infrastructure that operated entirely separate from their men's prison system. Former captives who managed to escape described facilities that functioned under distinct protocols, with specialized security measures and handling procedures tailored for female prisoners. One survivor recounted how she was moved between 3 different facilities during her captivity, each with its own particular function in the broader system. What's particularly disturbing about these prisons is how methodically they were organized. These weren't hasty conversions of existing buildings, though many started that way. Instead, ISIS developed purpose-built compounds with dedicated administrative systems, guard rotation schedules, and even specialized rooms designed for different forms of interrogation and punishment. The level of institutional organization suggests these facilities were integral to ISIS's governance strategy, not merely sites of opportunistic violence. Across former ISIS territory, intelligence agencies and humanitarian organizations have documented dozens of these women's prisons. The group showed remarkable adaptability in repurposing existing structures. Former schools with classrooms converted to communal cells, abandoned hospitals whose surgical theaters became interrogation rooms, and private homes transformed into detention centers for high-value captives. In some locations, they constructed dedicated facilities with features specifically designed to prevent escape while keeping prisoners hidden from potential rescue attempts. The system operated with bureaucratic precision. Survivors describe a hierarchical network where women were transferred between facilities based on calculated factors: their perceived intelligence value, ethnic background, age, and religious affiliation. Yazidi women, particularly targeted by ISIS, reported being processed through initial holding centers before transfer to longer-term facilities, or being sent to the notorious slave markets that operated adjacent to these prison compounds. Perhaps most telling are the internal ISIS documents recovered from captured administrative buildings. These papers reveal codified rules for female prisoner management, including detailed protocols for interrogation, punishment schedules, and administrative forms tracking prisoner movements between facilities. This paper trail provides damning evidence that the abuse of female detainees wasn't random or perpetrated by rogue elements, but was systematic and officially sanctioned at the highest levels of ISIS leadership. The physical design of these prisons reflects their dual purpose: confinement and concealment. Facilities were often constructed with windowless inner rooms, multiple security checkpoints, and, in some cases, underground components to shield them from aerial surveillance. Buildings were frequently unmarked on ISIS's own administrative maps, creating a detention network that existed in the shadows, even within their own territorial control. What made these facilities fundamentally different from conventional prisons was their explicit design as instruments of ideological warfare. These weren't merely detention centers, but processing facilities where women's identities were systematically broken down and reconstructed according to ISIS's extremist worldview. Through regulated cycles of violence, religious indoctrination, and psychological manipulation, these prisons functioned as factories of conversion, and compliance. Divine punishment, religious justification for captivity. Behind the concrete walls of ISIS detention centers lay something more insidious than mere physical confinement, an elaborate theological framework that transformed brutality into sacred duty. The Islamic State didn't merely establish prisons, they constructed an entire religious apparatus designed to sanctify their treatment of female captives, particularly those from non-Muslim backgrounds. ISIS's propaganda machine worked overtime to provide religious cover for their actions. Their flagship magazine, Dabiq, featured a notorious article titled "The Revival of Slavery Before the Hour," which meticulously outlined religious justifications for capturing and enslaving women from infidel groups. This wasn't casual propaganda. It was a calculated theological manifesto distributed to prison guards and administrators as operational doctrine. What made this system particularly chilling was how ISIS's religious scholars constructed these arguments. They cherry-picked obscure historical texts, reinterpreted specific passages, and systematically ignored centuries of mainstream religious scholarship that prohibited such practices. These interpretations weren't fringe viewpoints, but carefully crafted positions that received official approval from ISIS's religious council, giving them the veneer of theological legitimacy. In a particularly sinister innovation, ISIS established a specialized female religious police unit known as the Al-Khansa Brigade. These women, often foreign recruits, radicalized through online propaganda, were tasked with enforcing moral behavior within the women's prisons. They monitored prayer compliance, dress code adherence, and religious study, creating a suffocating environment where spiritual abuse complemented physical torture. Former captives described being forced to memorize religious texts while starving, punished for pronunciation errors even as they suffered from dehydration. The prison system operated on a religious classification hierarchy. Yazidi women, whose ancient faith combines elements of Zoroastrianism, Christianity, and Islam, received the harshest treatment under ISIS's theology. They were labeled devil worshippers, deserving of unlimited punishment. Christian women fell into a secondary category as people of the book, theoretically entitled to slightly better treatment, but still subjected to forced conversion. Most disturbing were the specialized rehabilitation programs for Muslim women deemed apostates, those who had lived secular lives or belonged to Islamic sects ISIS considered heretical. These women were subjected to uniquely personalized religious torture, designed to force their return to what ISIS considered true faith. Guards didn't simply receive operational training, they underwent specialized theological indoctrination on how to properly handle female prisoners. This created a perverse system in which the most brutal acts of violence were reframed as acts of religious duty. One former guard, later captured by Kurdish forces, described how prison administrators would lead prayer sessions before and after torture, ritualizing brutality with religion. ISIS leadership formalized this framework through a series of fatwas, religious rulings, specifically addressing the treatment of female prisoners. These documents, recovered from captured headquarters, show the bureaucratic nature of the abuse. One especially disturbing fatwa offered a religious justification for the rape of prepubescent girls, providing guards with theological cover for pedophilia. How did ISIS manage to transform religion from a system of spiritual guidance into the cornerstone of systematic abuse? The answer lies in their broader ideological project. By controlling the religious framework surrounding female captivity, ISIS asserted its authority to interpret and enforce religious law, a powerful signal of legitimacy in their so-called caliphate. Each prison became a laboratory of ideological enforcement, where their warped theology could be enacted at its most extreme. This weaponization of religious interpretation served multiple strategic purposes. It terrorized opponents, rewarded fighters with permission for their darkest impulses, and, most importantly, it showcased ISIS's power to implement unflinching religious law, reinforcing their image as an uncompromising Islamic state. Strategic enslavement, women as weapons of war. The logic behind ISIS's imprisonment of women wasn't just ideological, it was darkly strategic. Internal ISIS documents recovered in Mosul categorized female-targeted operations as high-impact, low-resource missions. One commander even noted that capturing 10 women yields more psychological damage than killing 50 fighters. This chilling calculation reveals how ISIS elevated gender-based violence from collateral cruelty to core military strategy. When ISIS swept through northern Iraq in 2014, their assault was highly organized, with female targets pre-identified. Intelligence officers carried lists of influential women, doctors, teachers, journalists, activists, slated for immediate detention. A former ISIS operative revealed that they ranked women by social importance, with high-value individuals marked for early capture as soon as a town fell. There was also an economic blueprint to this system. A handbook recovered from an ISIS commander detailed pricing structures for female captives based on age and ethnicity. Yazidi girls aged 10 to 20 were priced at 150,000 Iraqi dinars, about $130. Women over 40 fetched just 41,000 dinars, around $35. This was a marketplace of human lives, where value was reduced to a number. In ISIS territory, these women became a form of currency. When international sanctions cut off traditional funding, captives were traded, used for bartering, debts, and payments. According to UN estimates, ISIS made $21 to $45 million in 2016 from ransoms alone. Most horrific of all was how ISIS weaponized fertility. Marriage centers were actually breeding compounds where young captives were forcibly impregnated. An ISIS strategy paper titled "Establishing the Islamic State Strategic Framework" stated plainly, "The enemies of Islam can be defeated through the wombs of our captives." The targeting extended beyond individuals. By imprisoning women from minority groups, ISIS attacked entire cultures. In many Middle Eastern societies, women are guardians of heritage. By removing them, ISIS conducted cultural genocide, cutting off the transmission of identity between generations. This tactic had real military impact. Communities facing the threat of enslavement abandoned their lands, choosing exile over resistance. Analysts noted that ISIS held large territories with surprisingly few fighters, thanks to the multiplier effect of psychological warfare. ISIS also used their captivity system as a propaganda tool. Images of women in cages and public slave auctions were calculated spectacles designed to provoke the West and signal impunity. Meanwhile, other atrocities, systematic rape, forced pregnancy, child exploitation, remained hidden from the public eye. Female prisoners were also used as diplomatic leverage. By holding women from powerful tribes or minority groups, ISIS pressured local leaders into compliance. Rather than risk further harm to their female kin, many capitulated to ISIS demands. Traditional military intelligence failed to detect this strategy in time. Focused on weapons and troop movements, most missed the shadow war being waged through female captivity. As the dust settles on the remains of ISIS's caliphate, we're left to reckon with one of their most destructive legacies. Not bombs, not bullets, but the systematic annihilation of women's identities. This prison network didn't just contain bodies, it attempted to erase culture, to break the backbone of entire communities. Today, the physical caliphate is gone, but its shadow remains. Mass graves continue to be discovered. Thousands of women remain unaccounted for. Survivors and communities now face a future marked by collective trauma. If you found this video valuable, please share it. Now, a question for you. What responsibility do we have to document gender-based atrocities rather than letting them vanish from history?